Welcome everyone to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. All past shows are available in podcast form. You can find them at ArtistFirst.com. We welcome your questions and comments anytime to dj@artistfirst.com. Now, here they are, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
And thank you very much, Scott. And yes, this is us. We are here.
Here we are.
We are here. And welcome to another wonderful broadcast of the Soul of the Everyman, where the points are golden. Anyway, and where tonight's topic is sort of a continuation of the last two shows. It's funny. This has been sort of coming up in a recurring way in the last couple of shows, and maybe it's because it needed to. This time of year is, I think, always challenging. We've done shows in the past about the holidays and holiday stress, and that's enough to drive a lot of people around the bend pretty much every normal year. And then it seems like all the last few months of the summer and so on, there was so much going on. There was all those planets in retrograde. Everything was going backwards and sideways and upside down. And then there was all the the normal stress and sound and fury of the world, which is always with us, but it's sort of, as everything, it sort of rises and falls. And so those of us, we kind of break people down into two broad categories. There are those who need help and those who help. And the folks who needed others, needed help, grew to be sort of a constant, a constant signal, a constant sort of emptiness that needed filling. There was a lot of neediness out there, and the folks who kind of, I don't want to say pride themselves, but they sort of live their lives with, like, the mantra is, "I'm okay. How can I help you?" Don't worry about me. Is their kind of watchword. I'll be fine. How can I help you? The need was great, and the resources began to get strained. And so I think there was this, throughout the summer and up until this point, there's been a kind of a draining of, let's call them the helpers, or a draining of the advisors, a draining of the healers, to the point where we've reached a point where I think the need has outgrown the ability, at least at certain levels. And so we talked last show about healers and about the wounded healer. But you reach a point when you're a healer, when you're somebody who's, "I'm okay, how can I help you?" all the time, where you do come to the end, or you come to a point where you feel that you need someone to assist you. You need someone to heal you. You need someone to help you. And the thing about that mantra, Margaret, which is always a trouble, is that you build up a wall. The "I'm okay" wall can become fueled with sort of let's say pride. You don't want to ask for help. In fact, I said it before, you kind of pride yourself on not needing the help. But this can in itself become destructive. And that's what tonight's topic is about. It's even though you're the person everybody comes to, it doesn't mean you don't ever lose the human right, to be broken, to be needy, to be weak, and to not only need but accept and deserve healing. But there's this barrier we build up.
I believe what happens is, many times the people that need the help, they find people who are able to stabilize them. But then that becomes their crutch. Instead of growing with this and realizing that there are ways to self-stabilize, they've decided that, oh, I know what I have to do. I just have to go over to that person and I'll be just fine.
Mm.
And that is something that each person has got to take responsibility for. The person that is receiving the help has got to understand that you have an assignment. You must come to a point where you can stand on your own 2 feet. And the person that's helping also understands that this is a rhythm. It's very equivalent to when you have small children. And as a mother, you are run off your feet constantly when you have small children. It's just the way of things. And you have to teach them, but you also understand you've got to take time for yourself. And you understand that there are these cycles where it's when you can deal and when you just can't. And that's the personal responsibility of the person who is the helper or healer or the person that people come to. So that realization that you're human and the human part of you has got to be able to be taken care of. Otherwise, you go down and you're just no help to anybody, including yourself.
I think there's a huge component there of this. You've been as this person that's strong in helping others, and maybe you're right, enabling them too. But let's put that's a whole nother discussion. But as this person whom is always there for someone else, as well as being self-sufficient, you kind of lie to yourself that you don't need the help, that you're never going to not be strong. And I think there's a huge component of fear there, because people who are basically always saying to everyone else, "I'm okay," are afraid that it's not true, or are afraid if it appears that it's not, that suddenly that they need it becomes a sort of and this is the wrong way of thinking about it. It becomes sort of an internal failure, saying, why? How can I be needy? I'm the one who always, gives.
It depends on the person and where they are in their own personal development. I mean, honestly, if you are a realist, you can't go on forever, and you make room. It's being in a spot where you stand there and you go, this has just got to get done. And I'm the only one here. So I'd have to push this.
Well, who's the I in that? That's the person who's the healer, who's the giver all the time, right? I have to do it.
Well, it's just it depends on the situation. Sometimes there are situations where you can pull away, and then there are certain situations you cannot.
True. So there's an exigency. That's a great word, which if I say it again, my tongue may snap off. But there's a certain component to this person. Let's call this person the healer, if you will. There's a certain component which is saying, if I'm there and something needs to be done, I'm going to own it. I'm going to take it. I'm going to do it. And that's sort of we've kind of broadly broke the world into two halves: people who are needy or need help, or who maybe accept help more easily, and those who give it and don't accept help more easily. And if you're the person who is more willing to say, "I'll do it," versus let someone else do it, you can kind of ramp yourself up into this. A part of the component, and maybe it's a male thing. I think there's a component of pride in it, and there's this idea of sort of an indestructibility. I'm always strong. I'm always able to do. I'm always able to give. But I say again, it's sort of there's a fear about accepting help. You almost feel undeserving to ask for help, to accept help, because it has a component, and this is the psychoticness of it, of neediness, of never wanting to say I need, always wanting to say I give, and it's
Pride.
Exactly. There's a bit of, if it's not pride in the classic sense, it's this idea of sort of a toxic self-reliance, which can become a barrier
Vanity.
to vanity. Yeah, it could be a component of vanity if you take it to the nth degree. But there's it's almost a selflessness to a fault. You can be selfish to a fault. Everyone, I think, understands being selfish to a fault, but I think you can be selfless to a fault.
It depends again on the person. It depends on how honest they're willing to be with themselves to admit that they are vulnerable. And if they feel that they aren't vulnerable, then you are going to get this constant draw on what resources you may have.
Well, I think you should expound on that, because I think that's a key component. Admitting that one is vulnerable and all the sort of connotations of it.
Well, if you get into the mind and you believe the stories you're telling yourself that, you've got to do this, I'm the only one who can do this, there are cases where that's true, and many more cases that it's not. If you're not the one that is supposed to do it, it will become apparent to you. If you're pushing through because you're doing it because this is what you've always done, without checking back internally and seeing if you should be doing it, then you've disconnected yourself to your own divine connection, your intuition that allows you a clear pathway to what needs to be, as opposed to what needs to be done.
This is key. This is really, really good, because I think it's a very keen insight. If you are always putting yourself in the indispensable mode, it won't get done unless I do it. And then there's also this other mantra of, nobody appreciates me, and I have to do everything. But it's also this sort of almost a story you're telling yourself.
It is.
And that the indispensableness is ignoring the grace that you were just talking about, which is you say to yourself, I can do it, I could do it, and you need to stop right there and say, should I do it? Action is sometimes it's an opiate, it's a drug. Always acting, always doing, always being in the moment, always being indispensable, sort of a drug. I'm
going to stop you there. You're not really being in the moment when you're making that decision. You're just doing habit.
Not in the present moment, but I mean always. It's constantly busy. Constantly.
Busy work is just being lost in the doing state.
Yes, I'm saying the same thing. I'm saying always being do without ever checking, because action, as I said, is an opiate, and sometimes inaction is the most powerful action. Knowing when you shouldn't do something or when you should draw back.
Continually doing something is probably one of the most effective avoidance patterns that you can have.
Oh yeah, go on. That's perfect.
Well, you are so busy being involved with this, you don't have time to take care of the other thing that is screaming for your attention.
Oh, that's so good. I mean, this ties back to a couple other shows, but when something needs to be heard, getting busy and saying, well, I'm too, the lie is, oh, I'm too busy and indispensable to deal with that, with those things.
I don't have time for that.
I don't have time for that.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said, it's like the thing that needs to be heard, the broken thing that's in you, the brokenness or the neediness in you, is getting told all the time, oh, I don't have time for that. I've got these 500 things to do, and I got another. It's scheduling your life out to the nth degree, so you never have to listen to the internal.
Mm-hmm. And because of the situation that we're in right now, people have probably had more time than they've ever thought possible to be with themselves and nobody else.
That's scary.
Yes. That's when people are screaming, running around the house. How many times can you redecorate a room?
I don't know. I'll have to think about it. But drawing back from the immediate, but I think there's something really essential here is that, we look at people who are helpers and healers as being selfless, and maybe they are from the outside, but maybe it's a weird form of selfishness in the sense that you never have to look inside. You can always tell your the things that really need to get heard or really need to get done, that you're too busy. You're really being selfish by saying, well, I would love to X, Y, Z, but I don't have time. I'm too busy. I'm too important. It's really loose.
Yeah, I've got to go do my duty. I've got to help these people. I've got to, what I find fascinating is that there are a lot in the medical profession of first responders that, they understand you got to bust a move, you got to go do. But sometimes, especially if you're overworked, you got no time for you and all the things that are connected to you, usually like your family or obligations to relationships.
I think there's also, in the weird way of selfishness, is that you're constantly given a trump card, a way of saying, I'm important. I'm too important. I'm too essential. It's this constant litany of I have to do. I can't be bothered. I can't be defocused. I've got to do.
It depends on the person again, but many times it's duty. Duty becomes more important, completely important. This is my duty. I must do this. And that's all you know. To the detriment of everyone or everything else. And I'm not denigrating it. I'm just saying that, you have to stop and look at this because you're actually ignoring the important things in your life. You may be vital for in a hospital situation and you're doing triage or saving people's lives. I'm not saying that's not important, but I am saying you're going to have to take time. I feel very sad for the people that, especially over in Italy, when they were having all the reports of all the people who were in the hospitals, that just too many people, and the doctors were desperately trying to save them. Just how do you find a moment to take a break without all the people that are there? It can begin to weigh heavily on you, and unless you've done the internal work, you'll burn out.
Yeah, I mean, all those things are true, but I would say, though, I draw one bright line there, in that in an emergency, you may be the only person that is there to do. But I think the opiate, the drug part of it, is you're so important and you must do, and it feeds the ego tremendously. And it could have started out that you were the only person that could do such a thing, but then the ego creeps in and saying, you're the best. You can't. No one else can do it. It has to be done by you, and everything else in your life has to become secondary to this primary thing.
Well, the phrase, under those conditions, when it's not an emergency situation, but you know that you've got, what's the phrase that they use? If I don't do this, it won't be done the right way.
Oh, this is it. That mantra
Mhm.
and that's not only ego, but it's such a control. Because the key word is the right way.
Right.
Not that it won't be done, but that in some ways that if I don't do it, it doesn't get done right, and that's such a judgment and an ego thing. So this is the toxicity. I mean, we kind of started this with the destructive effects of being too giving, but it's in some ways a self-inflicted wound, because it's not that you're just being too giving, it's that you've turned giving into controlling. They need me and I need them to need me.
And a lot of it too is for the attention.
Mm.
The virtue signaling that we see happening all around.
Oh, yes. Well, yes,
Thank you.
There is. Go ahead.
But when you realize, I mean, and it takes an awareness to realize that you're actually doing this, and a brutal honesty with yourself that says, you know what, that's my ego being blown up.
Yeah.
That honesty, it takes courage to take that kind of honesty with yourself.
So let's springboard there. So when we say even the healer needs healing and so on, what we're really saying is that as a healer, you have to first say to yourself, in all honesty, the first thing I was a human, and the very first thing I was needy, because all of us are born into this life needing. We need care, we need feeding, we need shelter, we need someone to take care of us for a long period of time, all through our youth and childhood and youth, and the debt, if you will, that you incur is something that if it becomes sort of a psychosis, it can turn into this, I don't want to take any debt anymore. I don't want to accept any more healing. I always want to be the one who gives.
Right.
And this in and of itself is it's a denial of your own humanity.
Well, it's interesting too, because if you grow up in an environment, whether it's cultural or happens to be your family, but this is what you're supposed to do, this is your duty, you have been assigned, you've got to take care of this all the time.
Right.
It's, especially as a small child, you have to deprogram yourself from that, being the first one always, always, always there.
There's a component of that too. I mean, certainly you can be taught to be this sort of you will, or you can have it sort of pushed upon you.
Right, and you can be taught that way in various religions. You have to always put somebody else first, and that can be manipulated into, well, you are supposed to be taking care of me all the time. So it's something that as a human being you have to look at and be honest with yourself.
And that's exactly it. The thing that can rescue you from this, let's say, endless moment of doing, is the honesty, and that can also put a big pinprick, a big hole to let out all the air in that ego balloon. The ego balloon is inflated with, if I don't do it, it doesn't get done right. If I don't do it, if those people are needy, and if I wasn't around, they'd all whatever collapse into baskets, and I have to keep them all afloat at all times. And it's this you're literally puffing yourself up into the person who knows how to do it right, has all these people he always has to care for, she always has to care for, is the essential, indispensable, and these are all ego words,
Right.
and the pinprick, and this is why maybe when, reality will come in and teach you this lesson if you don't accept it, look at it from your point of view of being an honest person with yourself. Reality will come in and teach you that it will say, now all that falseness is cut out. Your body will fail. Your circumstances will change, and you will perforce be made needy. And if you haven't been honest, it can be an ego shock, which can put you into a tailspin. It can put you into a very bleak place.
Well, you're removing one of the main opinions of who you think you are.
Okay, go on. That's perfect.
Well, if this has always been your assignment, you take it on as your identity.
Exactly.
And when you realize that this is not so, it is a shock to yourself, because your soul has always been identifying with your ego. Suddenly the soul's like, no, and this body's falling apart because of all the stress you're creating. When all that sets in, there's all kinds of realizations that can come in, and it's not comfortable.
No.
We're not talking about comfort or building up your sense of self. We are talking about the sense of self in the realization of what has happened to you.
Well, so to turn it around, you're in doing this, in assuming this sort of indispensable, indestructible ego role, you deny yourself and you deny all things that you deem unimportant for this, let's say, ego construct, and then it gets popped like all good bubbles do, and it explodes and lets all the hot air out. And what you're left with is just this, these unresolved and maybe ignored parts of yourself, which you don't even know how to deal with. The ego construct is gone, and you're now in a place where it's like, I'm not important. I'm not. Now I'm needy. Now I'm broken.
Who am I?
Who am I?
That's the first. When all this goes, your first question is, who am I? Because you base all your decisions and all your reactions and all your states of thinking and being on your perspective of who you are.
On the illusion.
Well, what is, suddenly the illusion's gone. So
right.
This is a whole new world.
Yeah, and this is the toxicity of it. This is the sort of the destructive effects of being too giving. And maybe there are, of course, positive things too. There is a balance here that people do reach, and I think what we'll do is, at this moment, let's take the balance of the middle of the hour, go back to the studio for a little break, and we'll come back on the other side and talk more about those who need healing.
There is a Reaper is the story of 5-year-old Christopher Aaron and his life-changing struggle with leukemia. Winner of both the Indie Bragg Medallion as well as the reader's favorite silver medal for memoir, There is a Reaper has more than 100 Amazon book reviews and a 5-star rating. It has been described as life-changing, spiritual, a must-read, Just released on Audible and iTunes, this memoir is also available in paperback and on Amazon Kindle for only 99 cents. Get your copy of this life-changing memoir today.
Attention, soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and coasties. The holiday season is right around the corner. And some of you might be wondering, how am I going to afford to travel back home to visit my loved ones? Have no fear. Holidays for the Heroes is here. Last year, Holidays for the Heroes received donations from patriotic donors, and we were able to send 65 armed service members with a fully paid round-trip ticket and got them home for the holidays. Wait, but what's the catch, you might ask? Buckle your parachute strap. There is no catch and no hidden fees. Just contributions from good old-fashioned Americans who want to help heroes like you and show their appreciation for your service. If you're an active soldier and want to register, or an individual who wants to be a part of that growing group of patriotic donors, please go to www.holidaysfortheheroes.org. That's www.holidaysfortheheroes.org.
Rick Riordan fans, love mythology with plenty of action and humor? Destroyer's Blood is for you. The new fantasy novel by award-winning author Michael Lynes is book 1 of the adventures of Devkalion, the Blood series. Follow Dev and his magic sword Betrayer as they are suddenly attacked and forced to return to Olympus to fight in a war they want no part in. The world of men and gods is about to be destroyed by Zeus's ancient foe, and only Dev and Trey can stop him. The conflict never stops, and the amazing twist will have you on the edge of your seat. Act now while the ebook is on sale for only 99 cents. Destroyer's Blood is available on Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. And while you're there, get the free prequel, It's in the Blood, available for a limited time. The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed is the latest book from Michael Lynes, the award-winning author of There is a Reaper. Featuring 13 original stories, this wide-ranging collection has everything. Forbidden love, gods versus demigods, weird invading aliens, sexy seductive artificial intelligence, and unusual passion between the living and the dead. All set amidst fantastic worlds of pain and loss and boundless joy. From the sublime to the macabre to the bittersweet, The Fat Man Gets Out of Bed will leave you breathless with laughter, brimming with tears, trembling with suspense. Available now on Amazon.com, Google Play, iTunes, Kobo, and fine e-tailers everywhere. The wait is over. First Blood, Book 2 of the Blood series is out. Your favorite bad boy thief Dev is back, and the beautiful and deadly Trey is right there with him. She is sharp, sexy, and full of surprises. Their adventures continue as a new power arises to threaten the world. The heart of creation is under attack, and time is definitely not on their side, as they battle against their enemies' undead hordes. Can they unlock the hidden power that can defeat him, or will his forces draw first blood? Get all 3 installments in the series. Book 0, It's in the Blood. Book 1, Destroyer's Blood, and the new release, Book 2, First Blood, today. Available in ebook and paperback format on Amazon, Kobo, Apple, and most other fine e-tailers.
Thanks for joining us on The Soul of the Everyman on the ArtistFirst Radio Network. Let's get back to your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lynes.
And thank you very much, Z-Man. And we are back. And now we're going to start healing you people.
Oh my.
Tonight we're talking about it's sort of a continuation of the last couple of shows. And in this particular show, we're talking about the fact that being a healer or being somebody who is always a helper can also have its sort of toxicity, it can have its sort of negativity, and it can become an ego trip and something that people identify themselves with, and can become a blinding of the actual role that you have here. We often talk. We've talked many times in the past about dreaming the common dream. We're also here for different roles and different purposes. It may be, it certainly may be that in the moment or in a long period of time, you may be the person who needs to be the healer, the giver, the advisor. But you should, we all have to remain honest. You said it last half hour. The honesty is that we weren't always the giver. We were the receiver. We weren't always the strong one. We were often the weak one. And the honesty is that the cycles are as important as the current role that you happen to be in. Your role, your position in this sort of endless cycle is temporary. You are currently the person who can help. You will be the person who is going to be helped. You're currently the person who is young. You will be the person who is old. You're currently the person who is born. You will be the person who dies. The ego trip is that this is the eternal thing, and I determine what I do, and I am this and I am that. And this is all wonderful until reality pokes a big hole in that ego bubble and it pops. And if you haven't been honest, because ego bubbles are nothing but, in some ways, dishonesty. They're illusion. They're all about I, and not about being. They're about doing and all the sort of illusion of I can stop time and be here forever and I'll always be this and I'll never be that. The honesty of accepting help is that you will accept it now so that you may give it back at another moment to another person. The honesty of being weak is that you will take the offered help and healing. You'll become healed, maybe scarred, maybe stronger, and then you may be in a position to be the healer, to be the one who is the giver. And in fulfilling each role, you acquire the most essential thing, which is the experience into your eternity bank, the experience that shows both in the scars of the body and in the scars of the spirit and the soul. We said it last week. Scars, we're not here to remain unscathed or unscarred. We're here to become broken and to heal, and then to heal others and allow them to become healed and therefore scarred, therefore get them past the immediacy of their wounding to their healing, to their new power, to their next, position in the cycle. It isn't this sort of, I'm here and I'm never going to be anywhere else. It's movement. Being is also movement.
And it's vital for your own growth. And when I say growth, it's your consciousness, the clearing of your heart and your soul. Because frankly, that's the main reason why you are down here in relationships, is to clear your heart, your soul, and make that connection with your mind and your body. Because it's each part of you wants to have its own way. It's just the way it is. Like a bunch of unruly children in a car.
Yes.
Can't get away from them.
Can't kill them.
No. And they're all loud, and they all want to drive. But to understand that each part of you needs the others. Because, let's face it, the mental, the ego part don't want to tell you, I don't need anybody.
It's true. It's true.
And frankly, the body is usually not given a lot of voice.
Right.
It just sort of makes itself known by cravings, like I'm hungry, feed me, or I need sleep.
Or my knee hurts.
I
I have such a pain.
Or, the emotions are, again, different. The emotional body has a tendency to take stuff in and it's not allowed to drive many times. When it drives, it can be a little wild.
Yeah.
So it's understanding everything in you has a place. And once they understand, each part of you understands where it needs to reside so that the whole can harmonize and continue onward.
Well, and I think that's part of the honesty.
Mm-hmm.
The illusion likes to pick a winner, pick a driver, and put them in the driver's seat and never let anyone else have any say. And then you to the extent you can do that for a period of time, and maybe a long time, kind of drive in a particular direction towards this illusory destination or towards this illusory goal. But that's a great analogy, because eventually one of those other components, through its own frustration, will grab the wheel, so to speak, and you can end up crashing the vehicle for everybody. The analogy may get strained, but the point, I think, is important, that the journey is much more, and this is the trite thing, but it's true, the journey is much more important than the destination. The thing that says we must get to a destination is an illusion. Or the thing that says, that the goal is the important thing, and doesn't matter what happens along the way, or what doesn't get taken care of, or what doesn't get listened to. That's the illusion. You reach, as you said, the components of you that aren't being heard will find a way. The body will find a way. In its worst expressions, it can be something which is life-threatening or even life-ending. Some sort of, the diseases of the body which arise from ignoring or pushing down the subtle signs until they become completely, out of control. Emotion is the same thing. Yes, maybe letting emotion drive is a bad thing, but ignoring it or stuffing it or filling every portion of the car with unprocessed emotion turns it into, something that's just volatile and explosive. And when that emotion finally finds vent, it can often cause, a crash of monumental proportions. The ego becomes nothing more than a taskmaster, constantly keeping you from doing anything that's important except what feeds the ego.
Right. And I'd like to just, in observation, how you have drivers sometimes that the smallest thing and suddenly they're angry behind the wheel.
Yeah.
And, they might respond by chasing someone or racing someone or doing these crazy lane changes or, just irrational responses. And that sometimes is a pent-up of the fact that body hasn't been able to express, or your emotions haven't been able to express themselves. But the minute they're behind the wheel, the body's engaged. and suddenly the emotions are like, hey, we're powerful behind this wheel. And then suddenly their language, it's watching the language of drivers, I think, is always interesting. And when I say language, I mean how they drive as opposed to what they say.
Right. Well, let's bring this back a little bit towards the topic. Although every time we go through, oftentimes we'll find another topic to talk about. So we may talk about the language of driving one hour. So one thing I didn't want to miss before we reach the end of the hour is I wanted to honor the person who inspired this wonderful poet who I ran across really quite by accident. And I would encourage, if you have a moment, to look her up. Her name is Susan, I'm going to mispronounce it. Let's say Firebort, Fyrbort, Fearbort perhaps. And her poetry, I often say that poetry is the hardest thing. It's the hardest form of writing. It's so incredibly, every word, every pause, every kind of music of word, how it sounds, is important. And she's really very good. So the little section of the poem that she wrote that inspired this, I just wanted to attempt to read it without screwing it up, but I'll give my best. So this is Susan Firebort, and it starts out like this: sometimes we are exactly what we need, and I think she means who we need. Eventually, the helper will need assistance. The encourager will need uplifting. The comforter needs reassurance, and even the healer needs to be healed. And I think the most important word for me in that sentence is eventually, because in a particular point in time, you can be the helper, but at another point in time, eventually, you'll be the one who needs help, who needs assistance. And each one of these things the music here is of stages or of different points. The illusion is that you'll always be X, or I'll always be needy, I'll always be the one who gives. And that's the same illusion that says if I don't do it, it doesn't get done, or it won't be done right. That's the illusion. So I'm always the one who does. And this poem shows the stages and the time. Again, sometimes we are exactly what we need. And so those two different times, the thing that you are now is the thing that you need at another point. So you need someone else to be it. You can't be both things at the same time. If you're the healer, you will need to be healed. And conversely, if you're being healed, you will be healed, you will be scarred, and you will be the healer again one day with more experience. We talked about that last week. We said in order to become the wounded healer, the first thing you have to become is wounded. Because it's a badge that people can sense that from whence you speak. You have been there. You have done that. You have learned, and you now can speak with the voice of experience and authority, not just the voice of, well, it might be this and it might be that.
Well, you need to give permission to be vulnerable.
True.
Okay, so you have to understand that this life is always about cycles. And you are the healer, and then you are the wounded, and then again up. So it seesaws always back and forth. Even in the poem itself, what she's speaking of is when you see a situation and you help, encourage. If there are times when you're down and you need the encouragement, it's the human condition.
Yeah.
It's accepting the human condition. And many times, and I said this before, people feel that it's their duty to perform in a certain way, always the strong one. But that is not a realistic viewpoint of yourself. But it can be imposed on you by, as I said before, it could be culture, it could be family, it could be religion, it could be... And you have to have enough courage and self-knowledge to know where all that lay.
Mm.
Is this something that I accepted because I was told? I mean, honestly, in an Asian culture, you, especially if you are eldest and female,
Yeah.
you are to sacrifice everything for the family, everything. That's why, you were important if you got married off to another family and those families merged.
Right.
You were the sacrifice.
Yeah.
And that is the mindset that is given you. This is your duty. You must perform it. So if you've got to solve the problems of every single person in the family, that's what you're supposed to do continually.
Right. And I think it becomes toxic. Well, there's two ways. First of all, it's damaging if it's imposed upon you and you rebel against it, and there's a problem there. But I think people can end up, in essence, accepting that, buying into it, and to their detriment, because they in essence spend their humanity, their lifeblood, their life force in this really, it's a futile, it's an ego trip. Even if it was initially imposed upon you, if you buy into it, it will suck the life, literally suck the life out of you.
It does.
Yeah.
Suck the life out of you. And that is what is expected of you, and there is no questioning.
Well, in that case, you're not the healer. You are, as you said, the sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't talk about the victim here, because that's in essence another. These three or four things here: the advisor, the helper, and so on. One could say that they're voluntary things. I want to help. I want to advise. I want to be the healer. Whatever. But the victim is an involuntary position of ego, where it's imposed upon you that you will never be the one who benefits. You will always be the one who sacrifices. And that's a form of slavery and bondage, and it's also a form of making someone less than human.
Right.
It's not in the same category here because it's imposed, but has the same, if not worse, effects.
Well, if you understand what the opposite of that is, you can choose to be the hero as opposed to the victim. And in doing so, and I don't mean, you choose to be the hero because you're following along with you being sacrificed for something. It's more along the lines of you're checking back to see within yourself what is true.
Yep.
And then you take courage to follow that truth. That is the hero.
Yeah, and I'm not so. I like the hero and I like the victim, but I think there's a victim here. If you look at it from the point of view of being imposed as a victim, as imposed as a sacrifice, this is the people who benefit here are parasites.
Right.
They're living off another.
Right.
And both those things are toxic. You don't want to be the victim or the parasite. I think the hero is to the parallel, and always wanting to be the hero is another sort of one of these things here. You want to, if you're saying, well, I'll always be the savior, I'll always be the hero, sometimes you have to be the saved too. You have to be the one who requires rescuing versus the one who rescues. It's a parallel to these things. The hero is, again, can be a very big ego trip.
Right.
But I always see the victim and the people who live off victims as both being, this is both evil in different ways. The victim is being forced into this position of subhumanity. The ones who feed off of the victim are, in essence, dining off of another's energy. They're like jackals or parasites or scavengers. There's a lot of evil on that side of the fence. This is illusory and self-imposed. The other one is really bondage and slavery, and it's much more dark, you know.
Mhm. It is.
It's wrong all the way around. There's no good to being in this cycle. Unless you let yourself be stuck, you can go through these cycles and be good for everybody. You can be the hero and you can be the rescued, and it's okay. It's okay. But being in that side, this is entirely evil.
It is, but it's again, if you receive that as your identity, that you are the victim, that can be negative, a negative imprint on the soul. So to release your soul from that,
yes,
because the circumstantial thing, victimhood, you're going to have to forgive in order to escape the cage of victimhood.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole different discussion there.
Yes, this is another show.
It's another show, but I think in this point, I think that the interesting thing here that you brought up earlier, and I think it should be reemphasized, is that the honesty. You know, when you're born into this world, you're incarnate in this life, whatever you come in at a certain physical and soul incarnation level. It's without exception, nearly always, you are the one who receives at that point. When you are born, you receive food, you receive care, you receive shelter and sustenance. You can do nothing. You are all potential, and in the normal sort of course of events, you're the people who helped incarnate you, who gave you your body and in the spark, are more than willing to give and be the ones who provide, be your rescuer, be your healer, be your nurturer, and so on, with the implied balancing point that you will do this yourself as you grow to the point where you have that power. So that's the essential honesty, is that you begin here, but the hero's journey, Campbell, is that you transition through all these roles of healer and needing healing, of that one who needs to give advice and one who needs the fool, you know, the one who needs advice, and the wise crone who gives advice, and all these different roles all have a certain balance and a certain harmony. And that the honesty of the hero's journey is exactly all those things.
Right. Right. So in essence, you are capable of choosing your pathway.
And that's very important. You mentioned that earlier. And in choosing, what you're really asking for is grace, because at each point you have to say, is this now my time to do or to be or to accept? And that's that moment of grace, of listening to the heart, of getting the direction. What role must I assume now? Which doesn't mean you're there forever, but this is an important thing. Where am I now? Now I'm in the point where I need healing. Now I'm in the point where I need to give comfort.
Well, being in a space, the question always arises, I'm here. What is next?
Yeah.
The acknowledgement that it's process and there is an unfolding happening right before your eyes. Where do I need to be?
Well, I think where we need to be right now is, this is the soul of the Everyman, and I'm Michael Lyons.
Have we reached it?
Yes.
And I'm Margaret. And thank you for listening.